Pittsburgh Steelers fans, it is time once again for No Not the Curtain Call. We have officially made it to actual football, and with it, the return of Know Your Enemy. I'm not joined by Geoffrey Benedict tonight, who is on vacation, but I have a very special co-host. That is, of course, Tate from the Know-It-Alls podcast. Tate joined Brian Anthony Davis. I believe it was the Tales from 2 a.m. Podcast a couple days ago. So welcome back to Behind the Steel Curtain, Tate, and how you doing tonight?
Hey, thanks, Michael. I'm doing well, man. I mean, I love watching you and Geoffrey every Wednesday, the curtain call, and before that, when the season was in, Know Your Enemy. So, I'm ready just to talk some football, some Steelers, Cowboys, and whatever else we might discuss, man.
Love it, and I appreciate you checking out the show before. Once again, for those who don't know who I am, of course, my name is Michael Beck, Deputy Editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. And we're breaking down all things Pittsburgh Steelers versus Dallas Cowboys preseason week 1. I guess it's preseason week 0 technically for the Hall of Fame game. But Tate, we made it through the offseason. How excited are you to have actual live football back on the TV starting tomorrow, Thursday?
Man, I'm ready. I'm so ready for it, man. I mean, the way we went out last year against the Browns in that first playoff game, or I think even though we hit that losing streak at the end of the year and we were one of our last 4 games, lost 4 of our last 5 games is what I meant to say. I had high expectations for the playoffs and for my football to just be zapped away so quick and so unexpectedly. This has been long time from January to August. And now and then last year we didn't even have a preseason, kind of like all over the place. So just getting back to the structure of a real NFL season, and us having the extra preseason game this year and getting to see, I'm anxious to see Najee, even if it's for just one series, and Dwayne Haskins and James Pierre. And so a lot of these guys that have been making the name in camp, it sounds like so far, I'm anxious to see them on the gridiron.
Yeah, you know what? When you mentioned that playoff loss, I think that has kind of drugged this playoff or this offseason out longer to me. It just seems like every day is taking a little bit more, a couple more minutes. It feels like added on at the end of every day, just kind of stewing on that terrible defeat. But football's finally back and a shot at redemption for the Steelers. Of course, the Hall of Fame game, you don't get your Ben Roethlisbergers, TJ Watt. I'd be certainly surprised if he partook. Minka Fitzpatrick, of course. What are you most excited for, even though the big names aren't participating? What are you looking forward to the most when the game kicks off Thursday night?
Well, I think we're hardcore football fans. We've been watching this and doing this for a long time, preseason and all those things. So we know the big names aren't going to play. We may see those guys for 2 quarters in the third preseason game, But I think we just have so many. The new system, the new offensive line, the Matt Canada's play calling. Even though it'll probably be very vanilla in the preseason, we'll get some idea of what it's going to be like. Being under center, hopefully the majority of the time, and handing the ball off at least 50% of the time, we hope, get some good balance going. So, and, I'm anxious to see Antoine Brooks. I think he could be a good potential replacement for Mike Hilton. I know Millette is a savvy veteran. He's more of the cover guy. And if Sutton had to go to the inside, he'd be more of a cover guy too. But I think Brooks just brings that size and that physicality and tenacity to that position that I think, Pittsburgh is used to from that spot.
Yeah, I think for me, what I'm looking forward to the most is basically how infrequent we've seen the back half of the 2020 draft guys, like the Carlos Davises, really Anthony McFarland. It wasn't a big draft class, but because of no preseason last year, we didn't get to watch these guys. So now, like Antoine Brooks, like you also stated, like we're actually going to see these guys on the field in a bigger role than really we've ever seen them. So I'm interested to see what those guys can do. And of course, all the new acquisitions that found their way onto the team this year. But with it, there's a ton of pretty exciting position battles, depth chart battles going on here in training camp. Of course, all the quarterbacks kind of vying for that number 2 spot. And then the number 3 spot, the Steelers aren't carrying 4 guys. That's just basically a wasted roster spot at that point. Which one of these position battles are you kind of looking forward to the most? And do you think it could be settled in these preseason games?
I think the easiest one to say would be quarterback, but I'll stay away from the obvious one. So I think the position battle that I'm looking for is, and I'm pretty sure the middle linebacker, like who are we going to keep 5 guys, or are we just going to keep 4?
Yeah, it depends on the outside linebackers, I'd say. I know Jameer Jones is having a nice little camp for himself, but it really depends. I think typically they carry 9 total when it comes to outside and inside linebackers. It depends which way the 5 shifts. So, it usually goes back and forth.
So if I'm thinking about that, and I don't know how it'll shake out, but I'm thinking Cassius Marsh may be gone. I mean, because I think number 27, Marcus Allen and UG3, and with the drafting Buddy Johnson, I think those guys bring so much versatility, for special teams and just dime heavy dime packages and things like that. I think they offer a lot of versatility, and I think Roche can be good. He's still young, but I think he should already surpass Marshall on the depth chart as now. So if we have 4 strong edge rushers, 3 super strong edge rushers, and one that's talented but still young and needs to be groomed, and he'll be in a room with a lot of great guys. If he just gets some of the work ethic from TJ and Alex Highsmith, man, we'll be on to something. So if we keep 9 backers, I have to think maybe Marsh is the odd man out right now.
Yeah, I can totally get on board with that too. And one of the big factors when it comes to those rounding out of the depth charts is going to be special teams, especially from the outside linebacker room. We know Melvin Ingram, he's not going to play special teams. TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, they're just playing on defense. Maybe you see one of those guys. I'd probably lean towards Alex Highsmith because he's the young guy, maybe playing 1 unit, maybe.
Right.
That 4 spot, if they're only carrying 4 outside linebackers, I could see them siding with the guy that shows a little bit more prowess when it comes to that side of the game, which makes things a little more interesting. We'll see how that goes over time, but whoever it is needs to have that special teams downfield coverage ability, because the guys at the top, they're not going to ask them to play those spots, getting tired and kind of taking away from the defense. So that's kind of what I'm looking at from that side of things. But for me, I'll jump on the easy position battle that I'm obviously excited for. Mason Rudolph, Dwayne Haskins, that's kind of the premier one. We know Josh Dobbs is there as well. Hey, I'd be surprised if he made the team at this point, just based on the situations. But Haskins versus Rudolph is going to be fun. I anticipate as we go through preseason, probably by the 4th game, Ben might get a series, but probably be like 50-50 snap counts. You don't think Dobbs has slightly some favor just because he's Ben's boy? I would have said yes before how well it sounds like Haskins has been performing at training camp.
Right.
His intangibles, I think, will kind of outweigh that. I know they're still allowing the veteran practice squad rule, so I guess Dobbs could squeeze in and still kind of just be like the guy that's not in pads on the sideline that Ben could talk to. I could see that. That makes more sense than them carrying Dobbs and cutting a Haskins or Rudolph. I think that's the direction that would be the most likely if 4 were to make the team. Right. But I have a hard time seeing Mason Rudolph getting supplanted, but it'll be interesting when they shift between games, when the guys kind of get the number ones. Obviously, Mason Rudolph starting the Hall of Fame game, he'll get the better talent around him. I think game 2, you'll see Dwayne Haskins with the better talent, and then kind of going back and forth, figuring out who number 2 will be. But my question to you here is, what does Dwayne Haskins have to prove to become that number 2 quarterback? Because, of course, it's just the preseason, and Mason Rudolph has a ton more experience in that locker room.
Well, for full disclosure, I'm an Ohio State fan. So I followed Dwayne Haskins when he was at Ohio State. And he came in he can be really good in big games. He came in the year before he played his 1 year against Michigan. JT Barrett got hurt, and he came in and led them on a drive and led them on a touchdown drive to help them win that game. But I think it's just a matter of maturity. I don't even think it's on the field. I mean, I know he needs to clean up his footwork and maybe, study more and read defenses. But I think I'm in the DC metropolitan area myself. being from this area and playing for the Washington football team, going to that team and being home, it got, probably was a lot of things pulling on him, a lot of things that doesn't necessarily help maturity. You know what I mean? I mean, for some people, it may not affect it at all. But if you get home and get around some of your old friends and some of the old things you used to do, I think just being in a more structured environment, and he and Coach Tomlin seems to have a good relationship starting out already. And I watched his press conference yesterday, and I thought he sounded more mature than he had previously in the past. Like I was really impressed by where he's at thus far off the field.
Yeah, that obviously that's a huge factor for him. What a win would it be for the Steelers if they could find their next great quarterback from a guy off the street that costs $900K this year, and then he's a restricted free agent, so he's going to cost nothing next year too. That would be huge, and what a way to transition the team. I think that's what you kind of got to hope for.
I'm completely hoping for that, just like you said. I mean, he's a first round talent. I told Bad the other day on Tales from 2am. You don't throw 50 touchdowns in the Big Ten and not be a top talent. The only other guy to ever throw 50 touchdowns in the Big Ten, his name is Drew Brees. So I'm not saying Dwayne Haskins is Drew Brees. I'm just saying you got to be that good to throw that many touchdowns in the Big Ten.
Yeah, no, and you're spot on with that. I think him landing in Washington and just being around the vices of his environment, I think that was probably the worst spot for him. So maybe he could actually develop and turn out to be that first round pick that so many saw from him. Hopefully he can do that for the Steelers. That would be so sweet. But yes. Another position battle that has obviously gotten a lot of talk, and it's a starting spot, is that nickel corner position. As of right now, we really haven't heard much from the undrafted guys that the Steelers, of course, spent a lot of money on when it comes to Shakur Brown and Lamont Wade. They signed a ton of DBs.
And Butler, right?
Exactly. Really kind of the names we're hearing a lot right now. Not even Arthur Mollett. It seems like Antoine Brooks is kind of the favorite. And then at some points you kind of hear James Pierce playing outside. And then Cam Sutton's bumping into that nickel role, kind of like what they did with I'm forgetting his name, Antoine Blake, I believe it was Valentino Blake, and William Gay back in 2016, I want to say. That's what they've done in the past. Do you favor one guy in this competition here to kind of take that job, or is there someone you want to win that battle?
I understand how it'll pan out. I think if if James Pierre is playing really, really well on the outside, then they'll kick Sutton down to the nickel spot, because that'll just make him stronger, especially in coverage, But if Sutton can hold off Pierre on the outside, then I'd personally like to see, like I said a few minutes ago, Brooks on that inside nickel spot, just because of the physicality he brings, the run support, the blitzing. I mean, I watched him play at Maryland, like I said, because I live out here, and dude is a thumper from that position. He seems like he's in good shape. He said in one of his press conferences a few days ago that he's lost about 12 pounds. So, he's moving really fluidly and fast. And, I think he can potentially probably cover tight ends and backs out the backfield. But it all comes down to what happens on the outside between Pierre and Sutton to determine what happens on the inside.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what we're going to see. But I guess what is nice, if there is an injury at corner, I think we at least have another guy that can play outside in James Pierre. And then we do have someone who can play nickel if that's what the situation kind of unravels here, with Antoine Brooks being a guy who can play safety end.
So who do you think makes the secondary room?
Well, when it comes to the rounding out the depth chart, of course we'll have Hayden and Sutton at the top there. I think Antoine Brooks will slide in more as a strong safety by name, but he'll play that nickel corner spot like the Steelers have kind of done in the past. Okay. Like that's what Mike Hilton did, but he was listed as a corner. When it comes to rounding out the depth chart, I still think Justin Lane makes the team, but I think this is probably ends up being his last year unless he can show something different. James Pierre will be another guy, and I think Arthur Mollett will make it as well. Also, someone that might be someone who plays that kind of inside spot and then bounces back to perhaps free safety to kind of give Minkus some support. And Trey Norwood is another name I'd watch for. He seems like he's having a nice little camp for himself as well. I haven't heard anything really negative about the Oklahoma guy, but I've read some decently positive things through his performances this far. But
what about Shakur Brown? I mean, I know we paid him a nice unsigned free agent contract. I mean, do you think he doesn't make the squad? I mean, it's still early, I know, but
yeah,
he was really good at Michigan State.
He was. What makes this kind of challenging, of course, he got the biggest signing bonus. I don't think anyone ever found anything different. The biggest signing bonus for an undrafted player ever for a Pittsburgh Steeler. So that is significant, but right. I have not heard his name once at camp. He seems like a guy that's kind of disappeared, although he's kind of had that status. But at the end of the day, he's still an undrafted player, and undrafted players, more likely than not, more like 90% of the time, aren't making the team. So I'm forgetting the guy's name. I want to say it was Locke was his last name. He was a safety out of Texas, I want to say 2 years ago. He was the flashy kind of undrafted signing for the Steelers. Same situation, didn't make the team.
Okay, I remember that guy. Yeah.
I think it's going to be something along those lines again. Just because we haven't heard from him, we're definitely going to need to see this kid play in the preseason. But I don't have very high hopes on him stepping into the lineup right now, especially with how everyone else is kind of performing. But speaking of rookies here, I'm curious your thoughts on rookies in general when it comes to the top end of the draft and then kind of the back end, so kind of separate the two. How much should rookies actually play in the preseason? And we'll start with Najee Harris, Freiermuth, and Kendrick Green kind of being those guys that should be starters technically, and then we'll kind of get into the back half after. But from the guys through rounds 1 through 3 versus the kind of back half, how much should those high end guys play?
That's a rough one, Michael. Because you don't want to risk injury, but those guys have to get reps because they never had professional reps before. So exactly. There's kind of a fine line you have to walk. I mean, I feel like Kendrick Green probably gets more time than the other two, than Najee and Freiermuth. But just because of the position he plays, and because of the kind of rapport he has to build with those other people playing with him. You know, I mean, you can be a running back and you do have to rapport with your offensive line and the quarterback's cadence and all that stuff like that, but it's different than the offensive line. So I see, if I'm ranking them, I know Freiermuth was dealing with a shoulder injury, I think, past day or two. So I don't even know, is he going to play tomorrow? Do you know?
I haven't heard any reports on it, but it seems like it wasn't a big deal from Freiermuth. Okay. He landed on his left shoulder. His right shoulder he had surgery on last season, so thankfully it's not the same side. But it seemed like he was pretty loosey-goosey on the sideline when he was talking to the doctors. But just out of precautions, we know the grass at that Canton Stadium is not very good. Players have gotten injured there before. They've canceled games there before. So I think in that sense, I try to hold someone out if they are battling anything. And I really, when it comes to this question as well, I know Mike Tomlin kind of got a little bit of heat online because he said Najee Harris is going to play in every preseason game. But I wouldn't want to put my star running back on the field too much, just because that position translates so well from college to the NFL.
Yeah, I agree with you there. So, like I said, I rank Kendrick Green first, probably Freiermuth second. He'll probably get a quarter's worth of reps, and I think Najee may get one series. If it's 3 and out, he may get 2. But I think that's about it.
I think that's the ideal situation, especially with how many running backs are on the roster. So I guess that's kind of what you hope for. Benny Snell's been hurt as well, and then they signed Tony Brooks James, I believe his name is. So there is another running back on roster as well. That kind of complicates things a little bit, but I don't really anticipate Najee Harris playing too much.
So you think we'll see a lot of Kalen Ballage and
Yes, Balaj and McFarland, I think, are going to get a bulk of the carries here. I know Trey Edmonds is still on the roster, but I think we already know what we have in him in this point. But I think those two will feature a lot, that being McFarland, Balaj. After that, I think the new guy, Brooks James, will play probably the fourth quarter, that kind of garbage time. Because he did play for the Steelers last year as well.
Don't you feel like Jalen Samuels needs to prove himself this year?
He does. I bet he gets a quarter. But for me, when it comes to rounding out this running back depth chart, I just can't see Samuels making the team. The way it is unfolding, I know he's played like an H-back type role in Matt Canada's system in college. Just his production has completely fallen off since his rookie year. I have a hard time seeing Samuels make it this year. I had a hard time seeing him make it last year, but he still did.
I agree. Yeah.
This year, they add Balaj. Of course, Najee Harris is there. I just can't see Samuels.
I thought, was it last year or was it the year before? I thought we would have kept Kareth White. I liked Kareth White better than Jalen Samuels at that time when he was with us.
Yeah, I don't even know if Kareth White is on the team anymore, but he showed some explosiveness when he signed to the team. I believe when James Conner was battling some injury. I believe he was a draft pick of the Bears as well. But I don't think he's doing anything these days. But it'll be something to kind of look for. That running back depth chart, how it rounds out.
You think we keeping three or four running backs?
They carried 4 last year. The way the kind of receivers depth chart is kind of rounding out right now, it seems like there's a lot of big competition going on there. I think they'd rather kind of hold an extra spot, a 6 wide receiver than 4 running backs. Just because Najee Harris, of course, he's going to be the guy 95% of the snaps. Perhaps Snell or Balaj kind of being the number 2 guy. Kind of interchangeable. I think that's the competition. And then number 3 being McFarland, who's kind of the change of pace guy. I just don't really see anyone past that. I think Derek Watt will be the one fullback. But outside of that, I just don't see them keeping an extra running back when they could hold on to it. Perhaps another DB or wide receiver. I think those rooms could use extra body.
So who do you think is pushing Ray McCloud for that 5th receiver spot and potentially a 6th spot?
Well, you hear Rico Busey's name a lot. He's having a nice little camp for himself. Defensively, Steven Denmark's also putting together
I like him. He's a big corner. I like him because of his size.
Yeah, so I think it comes down to those 2 guys. If they can earn a spot and be that guy, heck, if they can be a better receiver, but obviously you want Ray McCloud to be on the field to be your kick return or punt return guy. If they can prove to be a better receiver than him, though, I have no problem with Ray being number 6 and then having a guy like Busey as your number 5 that steps on the field and catches some passes. So, of course, some names in the live chat there. Matthew Sexton's another guy that's done pretty well for himself. We've seen that name a few times. It's going to be a fun little competition. I'm excited to see how that rounds out, especially through the entirety of the preseason here. But on the topic of the preseason itself, in your opinion, I believe this was an article that ran on Behind the Steel Curtain today, but does winning in the preseason matter to you?
Doesn't matter at all. I'm looking, it's like the season is a war and the preseason is just one of the battles that don't matter. I mean, you just want to see your guys get in, get some work, do what you're supposed to do, and not get hurt. The score at the end of the game doesn't matter. Now there are game situations that matter. That, like, if it's a 2-minute drill, you want to see points put on the board, not because you care about the score, but just because in a 2-minute drill you want to see your team be able to execute and drive down the field. So it doesn't matter to me as much. Of course, we're all fans. We want to see our team win, but at the end of the day, it really has little or no effect on what's going to happen going forward.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. I think developing a winning culture is important, but the 2 times teams went 0-16, they both went undefeated in the preseason, of course, being the Lions and the Browns. So Maybe it's bad luck winning all your preseason games, but we do have a super chat here, and I'll get your opinion on this first, Tate. From BSG74, he puts $4.99 in the tip jar, so thank you for that, BSG. And he asks, how would you balance playing time for starters, regular starters, during the preseason versus having Rusty play at the start of the regular season? Tate, I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Well, that's a good question too. I mean, because again, there is that balance, you know. I mean, you don't want to risk injury, but guys have to knock the rust off. I think the best case situation to me is guys play in this year, since we have 4 games, the Hall of Fame game and 3 more. Guys play a little bit, start out maybe for a few series in the second game, and then play a half in the third game, the first half, and that's about it. You get like 3 quarters of live action to work against another team. Outside of that, all your work and all your reps is coming from practice. And, you know, Mike Tomlin and the Steelers had a philosophy of iron sharpening iron. I mean, we have a top 5 defense that our offense gets to practice against. There can't be probably not too many better foes to go against.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. I'd say the big names, like the guys you know are going to perform, I would limit them to 3 total quarters, a half of the last preseason game and probably a quarter of the second last one. For me, those guys would be. I want to lump Najee Harris in this, but since he's a rookie, I'd still get him to play a little bit more. But I'd say Big Ben. I don't think Juju needs the extra time. I'd say everyone on the old line needs to play, so that's pretty much it for the offense. But defensively, say Hayward and Tuitt, even Tyson Alualu, I'd lump in there because he's played for 12 years now.
Right.
Joe Hayden, Devin Bush, because he's coming back from injury. If he never tore his ACL, I think I'd lump him into that group anyway because of how talented he is. And then Minkah Fitzpatrick. I'd say everyone else, I'd want to try to polish him up as much as I possibly could. But the bigger names, the guys you know are going to perform, I just try to limit that chance of injury. I totally missed TJ Watt, which big mistake there.
Right.
TJ Watt, I'd play Alex Highsmith a little bit more just because he's so young. And Melvin Ingram, you know what you're getting out of Melvin Ingram. So I would try to limit him a little bit as well, especially because he's battled some injury concerns in the past. So those are the names I'd probably limit to 3 total quarters. Outside of that, I would say it's a pretty much full go. Although I wouldn't play any of your special teamers in the Hall of Fame game that you anticipate to make this team because of the history of guys hurting themselves on the field, namely kickers, especially the Steelers. For whatever reason, that kind of started the whole thing with Sean Sweezum. I believe he tore his ACL, and then Garrett Hartley, who signed and then got injured the week after, eventually leading to the trade for Josh Scobie, everyone's favorite kicker in Steelers history. But eventually,
it led us to 16 maybe, I don't remember, somewhere.
Yeah, I think it was just before the 2017 season. It was 15 or 16. But of course, that led us to Chris Boswell. But I don't want Chris Boswell getting hurt on the Hall of Fame game field either.
I forgot the guy's name. We picked up a kicker just to kick in camp and stuff. Didn't we?
Sam Sloman, formerly of the Los Angeles Rams.
Okay. And that's another interesting battle, not with Boswell. Bos is the man, but with Barry and Presley Harvin. I'm looking forward to seeing that one too. I mean, can Presley Harvin knock Barry out? We thought we got rid of Barry last year. He was back.
he snakes his way back in, like Jeff Hartman, senior editor of Behind the Steel Curtain, always says. He always finds his way back. He's like a cockroach that just will not go away.
Right.
So I think this might finally be the year that we see that brand new punter for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's taken a while, but I think we finally got there. Of course, knock on wood. There's still a couple weeks to go, but I have a lot of confidence in this kid.
You'd think that has to be the case since they used a draft pick on a punter. I mean, you think Harvin would get every consideration. Now they won't just give it to him, but because they drafted him, if they're ranked 1A and 1B, Harvin's probably 1A right now.
I would agree with that. My thoughts behind the punter battle, it's kind of interesting. I would say if it's 50-50, if they're completely down the middle even, I still go with Harvin because Jordan Berry tends to flop when the weather gets cold. You don't know. That's kind of an unknown with Presley Harvin III. And Presley Harvin, in years past in college, has had a better average, a better punting average. So those numbers would suggest, and like Jordan Berry kind of collapsing late in the year, I would give the shot to the younger kid. It's just time. The Steelers need good punting, and it's been bad for far too long, and it's been bad in crucial moments for too long. I believe it was a Dallas Cowboys game in 2017 or 2016 it was. Jordan Berry the ball hits the side of his foot, 10-yard net punt. Dallas wins the game. You know, that's
the game. Zeke Elliott took the screen pass and went like 85 yards on us.
Yeah, at the end there.
Right at the end, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so it's about time for the Pittsburgh Steelers to have some good punting. But as I look at the clock here, we are at our halfway point. Tate, before we let you go, is there anything you want to plug for the people?
No, nothing at all, man. Just we have this new Know It Alls podcast where we talk about a multitude of different sports and things like that. So, just check it out. It's on YouTube, Know It All Podcast, Facebook, the Know It All Podcast group. Join and just check us out.
Awesome. Great stuff. No, there's a ton of great interviews on your platform as well. And straight from the horse's mouth, Brian Anthony Davis, who we'll try to get Tate more involved in the rotation here as the weeks kind of go on. Of course, a great Steelers mind. We're always looking for those. So, Tate, thank you so much for hopping on with me tonight.
Thanks, man.
Alrighty. So everyone that's listening on Facebook and YouTube right now, just stay put. We'll switch over to part 2. If you're on the podcast platform side, just hang out for or just click over to part 2 now. You'll be able to catch the second half of Know Your Enemy right now. Alrighty, Steeler fans, it is time for the second half of our show. We'll have another special guest to break down the Cowboys side of things. But before we get there, of course, the first half of the show, I was joined with Tate, who's still in the room here. Tate, of course, from the Know It All podcast, and Wes Hickok puts $2 in the tip jar to thank him for his time. Once again, my name is Michael Beck, your deputy editor behind BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. We will have Mode from the Know It Alls as well, who is a Dallas Cowboys fan. So we'll get the second half, or the second partner of that show, breaking down the Cowboys side of things. So that's pretty exciting to get the second look. We haven't been able to break down these guests like we did back in the regular season. Of course, the kind of the heart and soul of the Know Your Enemies podcast was getting both sides of the story and knowing what to look for in this game. Of course, it's the preseason. There's a ton of information that, of course, as Steeler fans, we know what we're looking out for when it comes to that quarterback battle, when it comes to nickel corner, when it comes to running back 2, punter, et cetera, et cetera. We know what we're looking for. Now, we want to be tuned in and dialed in fans for the preseason, we'll get the Cowboys side of things to really know what we're looking for, what we're trying to understand from their perspective. Of course, it's the Hall of Fame game. A number of speeches going down this weekend. Troy Polamalu's, of course, kind of the flagship speech of the weekend. So excited, and hopefully he gets to perform that on the stage. Bill Cowher's going in, Donnie Shell. There's Bill Nunn, of course. There is a ton of Steelers going in. Of course, Alan Faneca. How could I forget? He's finally getting in as well. It's about time that some of these names get recognized for the Steelers, and it's very exciting to see them get to that point. Before Maud jumps on here, just kind of my overall thoughts for Thursday's game. I'm super excited for this one. I'm definitely kind of most curious, like everyone, what it's going to look like when it comes to these quarterbacks and how they all perform. Obviously, the timetables for their snap counts will be different week to week. But, of course, in this first game, we already know what the breakdown is going to be. It's going to be chopped up into thirds, Mason Rudolph, then Dwayne Haskins, and cleaned up by Josh Dobbs. If I had to guess, I don't think we'll see Ben in the second preseason game either. Really, what does he need to prove in the preseason? But I think we'll see more of like a 50-50 split between Rudolph and Haskins in that one. Then in week 3, I think that's when you'll see Ben get a quarter, and then whichever side the Steelers are leaning, we'll give the backup quarterbacks their kind of due from there. When it comes to the receivers, this is one that I'm going to be kind of interested to see how many guys the Steelers play. I don't anticipate many of kind of the top 3 guys, of course, being Claypool, Johnson, and Smith-Schuster, being in the Hall of Fame game. I think James Washington can earn himself some playing time. That might be an interesting one to watch. Just because he's kind of cemented himself as the 4th wide receiver. I'm not too curious. Like, I'm not too sure what we'll truthfully see out of James Washington, but I do anticipate him having a nice little preseason for himself. The Steelers coaches kind of have to handle that to the best of their abilities. After that, Ray McLeod, he's still fighting for his job. Just because he's a kick returner doesn't mean he's a lock for this team by any means. Busey, Sexton, hot on his heels. If the Steelers can get to some all-right kick return play, we've seen in years past, they will side with the better receiver than the better kick returner, regardless of their spot on the depth chart, even if it's someone that rarely plays. So that is something I'm definitely going to keep an eye out for. Like, in that sense, I'm definitely pulling for McLeod because the Steelers have not had good kick returning for quite some time. Ray McLeod was kind of that shining light for the first time in a long time. And you think back of pure kick returners when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Well, you got Stephon Logan in there. He was replaced after having like 4 kick return touchdowns in a preseason. The Steelers do not get hung up on these guys that that do crazy things in those kick return games. It's a facet of the game, but I think the Steelers would rather have those guys that contribute a little more on offense or defense. Sometimes, of course, you'll get those defensive backs returning kicks, but we don't exactly know what we'll get from those guys. It's one of those other things we definitely have to look out for. One of the other things I'm obviously excited to see in this preseason is what these new free agents do. Of course, being Trey Turner, our first look at him. Really, the offensive line in general being a pretty brand new unit. That's a big one to look out for. But when it comes to free agents, Melvin Ingram to see if he still has it. Trey Turner, if he looks more like Panthers Trey Turner than Los Angeles Chargers Trey Turner. Arthur Mollett, that's another guy will be kind of interesting. Joe Haig, who looked, to his credit, he was fine as a member of the Indianapolis Colts, but struggled mightily during his time down there in Tampa, winning a Super Bowl a season ago. So that's one guy I'm going to keep my eye on. Rashad Coward, of course, formerly of the Bears. Seems like he'll get a little bit of playing time because of the health of Kevin Dotson. Doesn't seem like Dotson's going to be playing tomorrow. But we will be able to see some of these depth pieces that the Steelers have acquired. Outside of that, of course, a lot of those names are coming in the offensive line. Another kind of battle we haven't really talked about, but seems to be coming to light here, is that left tackle. It doesn't seem it's as a lock for Chuks Okorafor to take that spot as once thought. Now it kind of seems like Dan Moore Jr. could be the guy that could be starting there. Jeff Schwartz's podcast, of course, former NFL offensive lineman in NFL media these days, has worked with Dan Moore Jr. in his also holding that offensive line academy. That's him and a number of guys have participated in. So Jeff Schwartz knows this battle pretty well. And he's saying, like, it sounds like Dan Moore is going to have a really good shot to be the starter for week 1. That isn't something we've talked about a whole lot. That was a guy, in my opinion, who I thought was going to be kind of the least likely to do anything in his rookie season. But here we are, just a matter of hours away from our first preseason game. And now we're getting reports that he could potentially be the Steelers starter at left tackle. That blows my mind a little bit. That would mean all 4 of the Steelers' first 4 draft picks from the 2021 draft class, not only would they be playing right away, but they'd be starting. That blows my mind right now, and that is completely off-brand for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But we do have our second special guest of the evening who I'd like to welcome to the conversation now. That would be Maud from the Know It Alls podcast as well. How's it going, man? Thanks for joining us.
What's going on, man? Nice to have you. Nice to be a part of the show. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it is our pleasure. Of course, we had Tate on in the first half. Your second half of your show. He missed football. How about you? Are you excited to have live football back on the TVs?
Man, listen, I'm super excited to have football back, man. I mean, football, the main sport, basketball, we talk everything, basketball, track. Of course, we played it all coming up, but, as you can see behind me, it's all about football, and it's all about those guys.
Hey, the root of our podcast is getting both sides before games. So we're excited to have you on. First time of the year getting to break down another opponent. So I've been looking forward to this for some time, really since that terrible, ugly Browns playoff loss that we try not to talk too much about. But I digress. Of course, both of our teams, the Steelers and the Cowboys, are playing the extra preseason game. In the history of the Hall of Fame game, no team has ever participated in the extra preseason game and won a Super Bowl. I suppose there's always time for a first, but do you like that your team is playing the extra preseason game, or would you prefer that they weren't?
You know what? I like it. I like it. I like it for the Steelers. I definitely like it for the Cowboys. This gives us an opportunity to actually see some of the young guys get in here, man, and mix it up. There's a lot of guys on the Cowboys roster who haven't got any tick, So I'm looking forward to this game. And I mean, we got 3 quarterbacks in the making right now after Dak that we got to get ready, man. I mean, so this game will give us the opportunity to kind of get these guys some reps in before we actually practice against the Rams this weekend as well. So,
gotcha. Now, for the Steelers fans, of course, that's the preseason, so we don't exactly know all those kind of battles going on the other side. But in my opinion, it would make it more exciting to know what I'm watching when the Cowboys take the field. So I guess just to kick things off on the top, are any of the star players like Dak or Zeke or Amari Cooper, are any of those guys planning to take the field?
No. So Dak is out. Amari's out. Tyron is out. DeMarcus Lawrence is out. So you won't see none of those guys. None of those guys will be playing. I'm happy, though. But some good stuff. We'll talk about Amari later. Some good stuff about Amari that I think you guys need to know coming into the season. But like I said, you're not going to see most of the stars. Zeke is going to get some tick, a couple of carries here and there. You're going to see Tony Pollard. But, man, that's not who you should pay attention to. This is a better Dallas defense that you're going to see, and that's what I would really be paying some attention to. Of course, we're seeing a lighter, more agile Roethlisberger. That's good, but I don't know if he's even going to play tomorrow. But still in all, like I said, this is where you're going to get a chance to see some of the younger guys get some tick.
Oh, exactly. And on the Steelers side, that's what we're looking out for too. Of course, the battle for the backup quarterback job. Our starting nickel job's kind of up in the air as well, and a few other backup positions. But what kind of a position battle should I be looking for when the Cowboys take the field on your side of things?
Sheesh, man, I'm telling you. Like I said, there's some young cats who haven't even got a chance to play. One I feel sorry for is Reggie Robinson. He's been there, but he was hurt. He hadn't even played. Nashawn Wright is not getting as much of the reps in practice that you want to see. Nashawn is gone. I mean, he was a draft pick of ours this year, and everybody was really high on him. But man, Boss Man is coming in balling. So at this point, it's one of those things where it's a cornerback competition, and Nashawn is losing. So, and I mean, you want that. You want the camp to be like that. Brennan Eagles is not getting any run, of course, at wide receiver. Simi, I forget how you say Simi's last name, but from Stanford, wide receiver from Stanford. He's actually not getting enough ticks. Osiris Mitchell is balling in camp. So he's kind of taking those spots. So you're going to see a lot of these guys get in and mix it up with Ben DiNucci, Garrett Gilbert, and Cooper Rush. So, you're going to see a lot of that on the offensive side of the ball. And then, like I said, on the defensive side of the ball, you're going to see some of these other cornerbacks who hadn't got some tick probably get some tick, because we're making cuts right after this. We're making cuts after the practice with the Rams, and after this game, there'll be some cuts that happen.
Right. I think the first cut down is 5 players before they jump all the way down to 53. Aside from that, I'm kind of curious. Are there any known names that Steeler fans would recognize that are kind of on the chopping block right now? I know there's some guys in our team that we're kind of getting floated around, but are there any kind of known commodities that could end up on the free agent market before week 1?
Man, no, not at all. I mean, outside of Malik Hooker, Malik Hooker's hurt. He came in. He's questionable. He's not hurt. He passed the physical, but he's questionable. And we don't know if he's going to fit into this defensive scheme the way that we want him to. I mean, shucks. Man, Tristan Hill. If there's anybody who's on the bubble, he's out and he's hurt. But, man, we got to get something from Tristan. If he don't show us something in this offseason, he might be packing his bags. I mean, I'll give him a bus ticket myself. Get him out of here, clean out his locker. I'll get down there and help him get a little duffel bag, clean out his locker. Because for the last couple of years, our defense, and that's the key for the Cowboys this year. You got to understand it. We're going how the defensive tackles go on defense. And Tristan Hill, who was a first-round draft pick, we ain't getting nothing out of him. So he would probably be the one that I would say, watch out for, because he could get it.
I know one of the big things that Steeler fans are looking for, of course, is how Dwayne Haskins compares to Mason Rudolph. Of course, the Cowboys last year losing Dak Prescott, you got to see a lot of your backup quarterbacks playing. Is there anyone that's a lock to be QB2, or is that kind of up in the air?
Garrett Gilbert. It's still up in the air, but Garrett Gilbert is QB2. And definitely, he's a former Longhorn, so of course, I mean, I've watched him. Yeah, hook him. I've watched him play. Actually, he's a Lake Travis kid, so I've watched him play all the way from high school. Definitely, he's one of those guys who, to me, is. I want to see something good happen for Garrett. I mean, if you go all the way back to the Texas-Alabama game, Garrett dang near beat Alabama himself. If it wasn't for that, I think it was Hightower that came and hit him and caused him to fumble, we win that game. You know what I mean? And that's a second national championship. He had brought us back. He played with a lot of moxie, but then after that, Texas will get to you, and he transferred to SMU. So he had a good career, then went to the Patriots, of course, as a backup, and now he's here. Garrett Gilbert's a solid quarterback. I mean, his dad was a quarterback pedigree at the Buffalo Bills. So, but Ben DiNucci is also balling in camp, and Cooper Rush has been balling for the last couple of years. They just couldn't take Andy Dalton's place because of the simple fact that, it's Andy Dalton. We paid that money for him to be a backup, and, that's what it is. But I'd like to tell you, if you guys want to know the people to watch out for who has had an awesome camp right now is your boy, number 88, CeeDee Lamb. I'm telling you, CeeDee Lamb has been impressive. He is, Katie Bardador shutting it down. I mean, he's right now. We have our starting cornerback who's starting at quarterback is Trevon Diggs, right? Trevon Diggs looks like a perennial Pro Bowler. He's having an awesome camp, right? CeeDee Lamb is eating him for breakfast. I mean, down there tearing him up. And right now, CeeDee's in Amari's place because Amari's hurt. But get this, Amari has been playing wide receiver for years now at 225, 230. Amari's down to 215 and plans on playing at 210 now. So, one of the things his mindset was, hey, he watched my guy down there in Atlanta, Julio Jones. He watched Julio Jones for a while and felt like, this is how I need to play the game this big. But he's like, man, it hasn't did me any good. I hadn't paid any different. And he's a four-time Pro Bowler. So as a four-time Pro Bowler, you would think, man, you don't change what you're doing. But no, Amari wants it all. He wants it all this year. But I'm telling you, CeeDee Lamb, watch him. Other person you need to watch, Dalton Schultz. Dalton Schultz came and taken tight end 1, and he's ready to go. Dalton Schultz looks like a good tight end, a solid tight end. I mean, making one-hand grabs, very agile, making the blocks. So, I mean, those are players that are going to be good. And then at the linebacker position, LVE is back. Leighton Vander Esch is back. He's back, man. I mean, he is playing lights out football. So you're going to see him all over the place. Definitely Urban, you'll see all over the place. And the last big splash of our camp has been Randy Gregory. I mean, Randy Gregory, now that he can smoke weed, he's been handling his business. So I guess he's happy about that. I guess he's seriously happy that he could go to the training room and roll one out in the field of play and make it happen. But man, seriously, those are the names that you should watch out for on the Cowboy side of the ball. You're going to see a lot of them. A lot. Oh, and Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons has definitely came in, solidified the middle linebacker position to the point to where Jalen is probably going to end up, Jalen Smith is going to end up having to play right side linebacker, which is cool. I mean, but hey, man, I mean, it goes how the defensive tackles go now. It really does. It's going to go how the defensive tackles go. And we'll see. I mean, we got Neville Gallimore. He's at one of them, and we'll see, how he's going to do. And, of course, Tristan Hill. But Carlos Watkins is another one who was balling in camp at DT. So we'll see. We'll see.
So when it comes to positions of that are kind of more thin when it comes to depth, of course, in the preseason, that's kind of where games could be won and lost, really, when it comes to the nitty-gritty of crunch time. What kind of spots should we, as Steeler fans, kind of be looking at? Like, okay, if it gets to the fourth quarter, the Cowboys are thin at this spot, maybe that's where the Steelers could find some success.
Running back, that would be the only thing that I would say, man, the Cowboys thin there. Defensively, nah. I mean, the good thing about this, and I have to say this, Cowboys fans get this, we get this, and we're much like Steeler fans. We get this that they think we're just, homers, and we think every year we're going to win the Super Bowl. And, I understand it. But I'm going to say something. This Cowboys camp is more focused than I've ever seen. I've never seen these guys. I mean, to the point to where Dak is out here running sprints after practice. This is QB1 out here running sprints after everybody's gone, right? So there's a whole other focus on top of this team. But at the linebacker position, of course, you got Jabril Cox. You got Luke Gifford. You got Micah Parsons. You got Jalen Smith, Keanu Newell. And then there's a guy who I really want you guys to watch out for. I'm looking for his name. You got to know this guy, man. Oh, God. He's number 57. And he's new to our squad. He is Luke Gifford. Luke Gifford, number 57. He has been all over practice, man. Him and Jabril Cox have made it hard for everybody. But, now that we got our line back, our line is really too deep. So there's not really, any plugs inside of the Cowboys lineup at this point, except running back.
Okay, no, that's an interesting one because I think the Steelers definitely have our kind of depth issues. So maybe when the game gets to crunch time, we could see the team in black and gold kind of fold a little bit. So now that will be something to look for, and definitely some names I'll keep in the back of my mind. This is something I asked to Tate earlier in the show, though, and I'm curious your thoughts. Do you think winning in the preseason matters? Is it a big deal? Does it help build morale? Should we care about the wins and losses now, or is it something that really is kind of overrated?
So you said something that was interesting, right? Depth is everything, right? It doesn't matter if your first 11 is all world. If that next 11 ain't ready to step up, football is one of those games where you gotta have some luck by being healthy late, or you got to have depth, right? And these guys, to me, when you start thinking about that, preseason doesn't matter, but it's the records is concerned. You could go 0-3 and turn around and win the Super Bowl. It's happened a couple of times, right? Or 0-4 now that we're playing so many preseason games. God, who cares? So literally, you could lose all of those, but if you were competitive and you actually put people on the field and you saw depth and you saw these guys being super competitive against the 2s and the 3s or the 1s and the 2s, yeah, that is what you want to see. You want to see you have enough depth to stay competitive and moving forward in to the regular season. Because if not, I mean, the preseason meant nothing. I mean, you've got to get these guys reps. You got to get them ready, and because you just don't know, it's in football, it's next man up.
I 100% agree with you on that one. The next question I had for you is more about the coaching staff now. Another year with Mike McCarthy. How are you feeling with him in charge after last season?
It's not him I was worried about. It was our defensive coordinator, man. He was, those guys didn't buy into the system. And now we have a defensive coordinator, Nolan, and hey, man, look, I have confidence in him. I have confidence in McCarthy to the point to where I believe he's a great enough manager and talent manager to get it done. I mean, look what he did in Green Bay. You could say that those years towards the end, he was tailing off and all of this. But hey, man, good enough manager, better than Barry Switzer, the best coach we've had in a long time. Let's just put it like that. I'm super duper. I'm one of those guys who was not a Jason Garrett guy. Jason Garrett to me was a puppet coach, and I wasn't happy with him. He never got the best out of his teams. Even the years that we went, 13-3, that was talent. It was in spite of him. It wasn't because of him. And I think McCarthy has something to do with the focus that these guys have in this offseason. I mean, when you look at it, like I said, these guys are focused in camp right now. And McCarthy has something to do with that. Yeah,
absolutely. That's definitely one thing I'm going to be looking out for, is just to see how this team, specifically the Cowboys here, how this team kind of gels together and everything kind of works out. See how well they play for their coach. So I think that's a big one. And I like that you say he's the best coach the Cowboys have had in some time. That's pretty big for any team. But before we get to the end of the show, I got a couple more questions for you. What do you think this Cowboys team's record is going to be at the end of the year? Of course, 17 games. So what kind of what are you feeling for the Dallas Cowboys?
Man, I went through this with Tate and them, and I see us winning 12. I see us winning 11, 12 games this year. Easy. I think with the return of Dak and with the return of Amari Cooper, barring injury now, you got to look at Zeke right now. Zeke has not looked this good since coming into camp, since he came to the league. And Zeke is trim, he's sleek, he's moving fast, his cuts is on par. I mean, definitely he is the Zeke of old. Everybody say he lost a step. You won't see that this year. The other thing about that is the reason why I say that the Cowboys will have great success this year is the offensive line was back. People forget that we were hurt, like really bad last year. And then defensively, we have some cohesiveness. We may not be, top 10 defense, but I guarantee you we're going to be in that 10 to 20 this year. I guarantee it, because the competition that is happening on that defensive side of the ball is ferocious. And then you brought in some vets, some wily vets to be able to kind of speak to some people. And then you got DeMarcus Lawrence on one side, Randy Gregory on the other. Man, I'm looking forward to this season. And 11, 12 games that we'll win easy. 11, 12 games.
No, I definitely like that. Oh, unfortunately, I do have a super chat, but it is throwing a little bit of shade. I have to load it up. Sean Manahan throws $2 in the tip jar and says, even with Dak, y'all were 1-4. Do you have any words to respond to Sean Manahan on the
Absolutely, slight? Mr. Manahan, thank you for your comment and your tip. Appreciate you. So because you tipped, you have the ability to speak. But you got to have a defense. You can't blame that. You got to have a defense if you're not stopping anybody. And last year, defensively, they were not cohesive. Nobody bought into that defense that was there. I forget the last defensive coordinator. He was so bad. I forget his name. Realistically, nobody bought into that. And defensively, we were getting ramrodded. So Dak was out there playing, pitch up tackle and basically trying to win by himself. He would score, then the other team would score, and he would score, and the other team would score. Nobody was stopping anybody on that side of the ball. But you forget they weren't stopping us. And Dak was on par to break every passing record that there was out there. Before
like 6,000 yards. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Before he got hurt. So if you think about that and you put a healthy Zeke back, a healthy offensive line back, and a defense can stop, sir, I'm sorry, sir, you're going to see a different Cowboy football team. Definitely.
Oh, I love it. We are at the top of the hour. So is there anything you want to plug before we sign off, Mud?
Definitely. I want to send shout outs to Tate, who was here earlier. And my brother, Big G, definitely the Know It Alls podcast. If y'all get a chance, make sure you stop by Know It Alls on definitely on YouTube. You can catch us on Facebook. We're there everywhere. I appreciate Behind the Steel Curtain to giving us opportunity to talk Cowboys. I love the Cowboys and the Longhorns. So whenever you want to talk Cowboys and Longhorns, I got you. I'm your man. So definitely appreciate you guys, man. Thank you for having us out.
Oh, our pleasure. And I know you're not on the schedule, but hopefully you can be there late in February. That would probably be the situation we'd all be looking out for. A fourth Steelers-Cowboys Super Bowl. Yeah, I'd buy in for that.
Yeah, I'll take that. I'll take that. I really would. I mean, last time that we were there and matched up, I think somebody had Neil O'Donnell's family member in the basement or something because he was throwing the Larry Browns just wide open. He was just
pick
throwing
six, and you get a pick six, and
he was just throwing, so he was wide open. Larry must have had on a Steeler jersey or something. I don't understand it, but yeah. So I would hope to see you guys late in the year and get this, you guys, Steeler Nation. I want you to understand, it could very well happen. It's not something that's out of the realm of possibility. Both teams are different this year. And I think both teams have made some strides to get better this year. Now, it's just going to depend on staying healthy.
Oh, absolutely, especially with that extra game. Once again, Maud from the Know It Alls podcast. And again, thanks to Tate for coming on earlier. Once again, this is BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. Make sure you're checking out the entire family of podcasts, specifically on those streaming apps. There's a ton of content that you don't get on YouTube and Facebook that you do get there. So make sure you're subscribing wherever you get your podcast from. And before we go, as always, make sure you're clicking over to BehindTheSteelCurtain.com for your breaking news, your commentary, film rooms, etc. You want that Steelers content, you're going to find it there. So I want to thank everyone, both of our guests for coming on, and thank everyone for tuning in and joining the ride with us. We'll catch you guys next week. By that time, we'll have football actually have been watched. It cannot get better than this. So once again, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in, and we will